The ability to speak Mandarin Chinese fluently is undoubtedly a great skill to have. The ability to communicate with over 1 billion people opens up all kinds of lucrative business and employment opportunities, of course, and you gain a huge status boost in society. I mean, seriously, when you speak Chinese well, some people really look at you like you're in special forces or something. It's really cool.
Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne.
If you learn Chinese well, you also get increased confidence in your ability to learn pretty much any other skill in the world. And learning languages is great for your mental health. Oh, and let's not forget the ability to watch cheesy Chinese dramas without English subtitles. But what is the true cost of developing this skill, and is it worth it? Well, today I'm going to get to the bottom of this question once and for all. I'm diving deep into the real cost of fluent Mandarin. And no, I'm not just talking about the financial cost. That's just one part of it. We're going to go into the 3 most important currencies we all care about. So number 1 is, of course, money, the obvious one. Number 2, slightly less obvious, is energy. And number 3 is time. The most important one, of course, because it's the one thing we can't ever get back. So before we get started, let's establish what level of fluency we're talking about getting to, because fluency is a very wide spectrum. So my preferred measuring stick, and the one seemingly preferred by everyone talking about languages these days, is the ABC system from the CERFL. That's a lot of letters. There are 6 levels: A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. And B2 seems to be the level that classifies as real fluency by the professional language learners I've seen online and myself. So here's the definition. Can interact with a degree of fluency and spontaneity that makes regular interaction with native speakers quite possible without strain for either party. An easier way to think about it is Jackie Chan from Rush Hour.
My daddy once caught a bullet with his bare hands.
So when you're at B2, you're not perfect, but you understand most of what's being said, and you can say stuff on a wide variety of topics without causing immense pain and suffering for anyone else involved. So this is extremely respectable and certainly classes as fluent in my book. Now that we've established that, let's look at the time it will take for you to achieve this level. If you do a Google search, you'll find the official figure for Chinese fluency using traditional methods as 2,200 hours. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I've got a problem with this number, several in fact. Number 1, it's from the FSI, the Foreign Services Institute, and they base this on their own program, which kind of looks like it sucks, to be honest. I've taken a peek and it's just kind of your typical textbook classroom teacher format as far as I'm concerned, and no wonder all the government people go there to learn Chinese. Seriously, looks super boring and not that effective. Number 2, no proof of these results. I couldn't find any personally. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, I just couldn't find it. How do they test proficiency? No idea. And even if this amount of class time does lead to real fluency, which I see no evidence that it does, this does not include the extra time required for travel to and from classes, homework, coursework, outside immersion and speaking practice, which would also be required for fluency, studying for and sitting exams, etc., which would be at least another 1,000 hours. Next, it doesn't count how the average learner feels throughout the entire learning process, i.e., will they actually be interested enough to finish the program? So the FSI is apparently the go-to for workers and government employees who have to be there, and maybe they can get through as they are being paid for it, but could the average Chinese learner, hobbyist, get through their teaching materials long enough to become fluent? I can only speak for myself, and I would guess no. And finally, of all of the thousands of Chinese learners I've interacted with over the years, I've never actually met someone that's taken the FSI program. And I think most people tend to just do a mishmash of all kinds of different learning activities. And they also spend a lot of time, like I did, like MB co-founder Phil Crimmins also did, sort of stumbling around trying to figure out how to actually learn languages in the first place. And so considering all this, I'd like to suggest a far more realistic figure of between 3,500 and 5,000 hours for B2 fluency. That's 2 to 3 years full-time, all while likely feeling bored and confused throughout most of it. So it could and does take much longer than 2,200 hours to reach B2 or above level of fluency in Chinese with these methods, but you likely aren't going to make it through anyway because you'd be bored out of your mind. Now, by the way, If this is depressing you, don't switch to another video just yet, as I'm going to share with you a far more efficient path to fluency. Before I do though, let's dive into the potential financial costs of Mandarin fluency. Now, the reason I say potential costs is that everyone's going to have their own time money mix, and any of the resources below have a price tag because they claim to save you time, and that the value of your saved time will be greater than their price. However, everyone's going to have a different amount of money they'll decide to trade in for time, so there's no precise dollar amount per person really. More importantly though, is that not all resources do as good a job as others as actually saving you time. Some of them waste your time. Perhaps the biggest offender of this is university. The average university degree in Chinese will set you back at least $100,000 in the US, and if you go to a Chinese university like Phil and I did, then it's a lot cheaper, around $15,000. However, this will involve moving to China, which will add on at least $10,000 a year in expenses. Even if university isn't the chosen option for learners, it's common to pay for private school programs or immersion programs in China for a few $1,000s each, and more than once. Or just visit China to go mix with the locals and absorb the language through osmosis. Whatever happens, we're looking at least $5,000 here on average, much more if you actually want to reach fluency. And does it actually save you time? Well, not particularly. Then there's private tutoring done on platforms like italki or Tandem or HelloTalk. Now these can be relatively cheap or even free, and it's the first one on this list I would consider essential towards becoming fluent, but you know, paid is better. So to achieve fluency, you don't need as much speaking practice as you do input, as in listening to, reading and watching Chinese content, just enough to activate what you learn from immersion. So perhaps just 100 or 200 hours total for B2 fluency. So that's around $5,000 at 20 bucks an hour. Now, in terms of saving you time, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck with online tutors than you would for university, a lot more. And it's not perfect because tutors often don't provide a curriculum, but it's great for activation of the language. Now, you could save a ton of money by finding free language exchange partners on apps like Tandem or HelloTalk, but in my personal opinion, you end up spending more in time than you save in money. First of all, you kind of need to speak an hour of English for every hour of Chinese. It's a language exchange, and spend a lot more time and energy maintaining these relationships and building new ones. Furthermore, your language exchange partner won't be taking notes or giving you flashcard fodder like a tutor would. Then we have books. Now, I personally don't think textbooks or any kind of books like novels, things like that, are necessary to speak fluent Chinese at all, as the best kind of immersion is at least partly audio based, and just reading alone, while great for vocabulary building and grammar and certainly not harmful, doesn't help you sound like a native speaker that much. That's why I like Mandarin Companion and graded reading apps like Du Chinese and the Chairman's Bow, because they do come with audio and high quality audio as well. So if you're going to read, make sure you at least listen at the same time if it's convenient to do so. Now, most people spend, I would say, on average $500 or so on books, digital or analog, over their time spent learning Chinese. Now, textbooks overall aren't worth it, don't really save you much time. In fact, they can actually be harmful in a lot of ways because they go against how languages should be acquired, in my opinion. Graded readers do save you a lot of time, and I would rate them a lot better, because trying to find native Chinese content that happens to be simple enough for you to understand at lower levels, I mean, it's tough. And in fact, the whole industry of graded content exists purely on the value proposition that they can save you time in that search. Still though, they can't know exactly what you know, so it's imperfect unless there was some way of knowing precisely what you've studied previously. Then we have online courses. Now, there are tons of these for Chinese, like Yo-Yo Chinese, Chinese for Us, Chinese Zero to Hero, and of course, our course, The Blueprint. Now, these range wildly in price and quality, and I've seen many of these courses, and most of them are certainly worth checking out. These creators are smart, talented, and great teachers. And then we have language apps like Duolingo, Hello Chinese, and websites and audio programs like Rosetta Stone, Pimsleur, Glossika, Chinese Pod, etc. All in all, I'd say the average learner will try at least a couple of these, maybe even for a long time. I certainly did, and some of these are pretty decent for beginners and intermediates. I've personally always been a fan of Chinese Pod and the much lesser known Pop-Up Chinese. I think they have great content and I highly recommend them for lower levels. All in all, I'd say you're looking at another 500 to $1,000 for all of these on average, including any recurring monthly fees. So in total, I'd give a rough estimate that the average Chinese learner will probably spend around $20,000 getting to B2 fluency. Now, there's of course a bell curve to this. Some learners might only spend $2,000 to $3,000, and others who go all in on university and expensive classes and trips to China may pay more than $200,000. Now, finally, I want to talk about an often overlooked cost to learning Chinese to a reasonably high level, and that is energy. There are some learning methods that inherently just take up more energy than others. I've sat through countless classes myself where the teacher has spent most of the time talking at me, explaining some obscure grammar concept, for example. In the single semester I spent studying Chinese at university with Phil, there were all kinds of classes that I took that turned out to be completely useless. One was about ancient Chinese, which, well, pretty fascinating, did not make me more fluent at all. Another went into insane depth regarding mouth muscle movement and position required to pronounce Mandarin correctly. The teacher barely demonstrated the stuff or walked us through it. She just described indecipherable diagrams from a book in Chinese. I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. Oh, and by the way, if you'd like a pronunciation class done right, check out my full guide right here. I've got tons of these stories. I mean, my first textbook introduced an ancient Tang Dynasty poem about a butterfly. My first tutor had me write out relatively complicated, seemingly randomly chosen characters over and over again.
How many times?
Well, let's say for as long as it takes for the message to sink in.
Which is, unfortunately, still the go-to soul-destroying method for learning Chinese characters, despite the fact that there is a far superior method in existence. This one. Then there's the exams. The HSK is cool to have as a goal, as something to work towards, as a benchmark, but passing these exams does not necessarily mean you're fluent, as they primarily test your reading, listening, and writing. From what I've heard, the higher level HSK 7 to 9 exam is super hard, and I think even native speakers would struggle with it without proper preparation. So the key takeaway from all this is that by far the majority of things that most learners do to learn Chinese, such as sitting through classes, traveling to and from classes, slogging through textbooks, cramming for and sitting through exams, while this can all be novel and interesting at first, none of them are truly necessary to speak fluent Chinese, and they are hard work. They aren't that fun, and they require a lot of your energy and for very little results. Even certain popular language learning apps, who shall remain nameless, feel super fun, even addictive, but will not lead to fluency. So when we work hard at something and we expend a lot of energy, if we either don't enjoy the process or don't get results or both, then we quickly get bored, our motivation plummets, and we can even experience burnout. And that means we're likely to quit. So to paraphrase a quote from multi-billionaire Grant Cardone I saw while surfing YouTube shorts the other day, burnout doesn't come from working a lot, it comes from working a lot without seeing success. So to use our energy efficiently, we need to learn in a way that is both enjoyable and leads to authentic proficiency, real results, right? So I've spoken about what we consider to be the ultimate approach for learning Chinese in several videos on our channel, including this one. But for easy reference, here's the simple 3-step process you need to follow to acquire Chinese to fluency relatively quickly and easily. Number 1, build understanding by learning pronunciation well and learning characters well. Learn how to read and build a base vocabulary of around 1,000 common words or so. Number 2, get a lot of understandable messages primarily by immersing in Chinese. And number 3, activate the language primarily through lots of speaking practice. Writing is fine too, speaking is just better. Just like reading is okay, but listening is better. Following this framework will get you great results for sure. So how much time, money, and energy you spend and in what ratio depends on your personal approach. So as a general rule, as long as you're following the framework, if you spend a bit more money, you're likely to spend less energy and time, and vice versa. So for example, these 2 videos that I mentioned earlier contain pretty much everything you need to know about pronunciation and learning characters. And you could complete the entire build stage, stage 1, just using these and investing quite a bit of time figuring things out on your own, such as how to practice pronunciation, how to learn words, which characters and words to learn and what order for more efficiency, building your own flashcards, etc. But if you'd like to save a ton of time and energy, then you should really consider getting the Blueprint, our series of Chinese courses. So we estimate that if you follow our courses, real B2 fluency could take as little as 800 hours from zero. Now, there are differences between learners, such as aptitude, personality, psychology, eating and drinking habits, all kinds of things that could raise that number to maybe 1,000 or 1,500 hours. Do you know what? Maybe even 2,000 for some, but generally you're likely to save at least 1,000 hours and potentially a lot more, and you never have to go anywhere. You can just use your laptop or phone. Now, the Blueprint's not cheap. In fact, it's the most expensive Chinese resource on the internet. Yay! However, the reason for this is primarily that if you follow our simple step-by-step curriculum, then build, get, and activate is almost entirely taken care of for you, helping you achieve a level of Chinese that even the best universities in the world cannot promise, all with a fraction of the average time and energy and money usually required. So yeah, expensive for a Chinese course, but for a university degree, bargain. So if you'd like to learn more, you can check out our website, mandarinblueprint.com, or there's a free webinar below for all the details. So overall, if you follow the right approach and use the most efficient methods out there, you're looking at around 1,000 hours for B2 fluency and at least $1,000 to acquire one of the most impressive skills on the planet. Worth it? I'd say 100%. Yes. So if you'd like to learn more about how to stick to your study and build an unbreakable habit that will allow you to invest that 1,000 hours of your life consistently, you can watch this video right here for the full guide.